organization's Managing Director of Public Policy Services. In that role, I led the association's political, regulatory, and legislative operations, and was fortunate to work with some really amazing people and companies in Ohio. Like she said, I spent time in the Auditor of State's office, the House and Senate, and I'm a graduate of Xavier and Cleveland State University. This has truly been a whirlwind time for me. Like I said, this week I've been fortunate to meet with so many great people. This event has provided me the opportunity to meet with so many of you. It started yesterday with an executive committee meeting, followed by my first Board of Trustees meeting, and then a really special evening last night as we inducted new members into the Hall of Fame. For those of you who've never attended a Hall of Fame dinner, please put a placeholder in your calendar for, I think, 2026, which will be our next one. It's really a special night for those inducted, for their friends and families who have supported each inductee throughout their distinguished careers. It's truly inspiring for someone like me to be able to learn from them as I begin my tenure with the association. When we talk about passion, just look to the 13 people who were inducted in the Hall of Fame last night. Each one had a unique and special career supporting this industry, and the common theme among them all was their love and passion they have for the oil and gas industry. I've been asked many times since I announced that I would be leaving the Manufacturers Association to head up OOGA, why would you consider leaving the OMA? I can give you several answers and a lot of reasons, but the true answer is pretty simple. It's because I believe there's so much opportunity in the oil and gas industry, especially here in Ohio. How couldn't I take a job and take advantage of that type of opportunity? The history of Ohio oil and gas dates back all the way to the Ohio Civil War, all the way back to the United States Civil War. In the years between then and now, there have been booms and, of course, lean times. And there's going to be more challenges ahead in the coming years as the question about America's energy future is going to be debated vigorously. But I truly believe that the energy that's produced, processed, and transported here in Ohio will play a key role not only in Ohio's energy economy, but the country's energy independence. As we've seen with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Ohio is going to play a key role in what happens in the future for energy policy across the world. That is why I'm so optimistic about this industry. We have a chance to work together and do something that for years was often seen as a pipe dream. This association has a chance to play a major role in the energy renaissance that's taking place in this region, and we'd be foolish not to take advantage of the opportunities that will present themselves now and in the coming years. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the Ohio Oil and Gas Association. Over the past 75 years, this association has weathered the ups and downs of an often turbulent industry, but one thing has stayed constant, and that is the association. I don't take this new responsibility lightly. It's important for each of us to leave the association stronger than how we found it and when we first started to engage with it. Last week, I wrote a note to the board telling them how deeply I cared about the mission of trade associations. It's a powerful thing to have one industry voice speaking for a unified industry in the halls of the State House and to our elected officials. That type of power can change the state, the country, and possibly even the world. So as we begin another day here in Columbus and another annual meeting, I promise you that the staff and I will do our absolute best for all of our successors that will be here 75 years from now with an even stronger and more influential trade association in Ohio Oil and Gas Association. So thank you for coming to this year's annual meeting. Thank you for entrusting me to lead your organization. Please stick around both days to hear from some amazing speakers and panelists. Like we heard before, Toby Rice will be here. Dave Yost is going to be here on Friday. Please attend all the events the association has planned over the next 2 days. It's important for all of us to show our support for the sponsors who made all this happen. So again, thank you to the sponsors and thank you to the staff. I also want to thank Tom Stewart if he's out there. Tom is a legend for this association, and he's been nothing but gracious to me and helpful to me as I've started over the last 2 weeks. It's been an absolute resource. So Tom, I'd like to thank you personally for all you've done for me over the last couple of days or in weeks. If you see me over the next day and a half, please grab me. I'd love to talk to you. Any advice, words of wisdom? I'm sure there's a lot of it. You guys aren't shy. I've learned that last night at the bar. I'm excited to meet you all. Please reach out. Thank you very much. Enjoy your time here. And like I said, really excited to be part of this. So thank you.
Well, Chadsey wrote, well, I'm supposed to say, thank you, Rob, for those comments, and I can tell we're in good hands. Congratulations and welcome. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say, man, he's doing it right, isn't he? He was at the bar last night with all y'all. Tell you what, folks. Do I advance or do you advance, Marty? You're not sure? Let's find out. Okay. I say that like Marty and I are chums, but after all these years, I feel like, Marty, come on up here. Come on. Oh, y'all, if you don't know Marty, shame on you. Mr. Shumway has been involved in the resource industry for the majority of his career, 20 years of experience in mining and petroleum industries. But I like the fact that as a non-engineer, as a non-boots on the ground gal, when Marty speaks, I understand. I actually get it. So folks, you are really in for a treat. Marty's the petroleum engineer, certified petroleum geologist, and I have the number here if you want to look him up. I don't know how you do that, but if you want to, come see me. Got his bachelor's and master's from the Ohio State University. He is the technical services director for Locust Bioenergy Solutions, responsible for oil field applications of the company's biosurfactant-based products. I got that right. Chadsey, thank you. Marty, come on up here and make everybody smart.
Thank you, Josie. Thank you very much. Thank you for that gracious introduction. I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody coming, and welcome to the OOGA winter meeting. It's my pleasure to present this information again. I was trying to remember how many years I've been involved with this, but it's been some time. It's a love-hate relationship that I have with preparing this report. It's a lot of work, and hopefully it's useful for everybody. This year's presentation is going to be a little abbreviated, and part of that reason is the ODNR hasn't released a lot of the production data for 2021. Actually, when I downloaded the data, we had 0 conventional data, and we had the first 3 quarters of the unconventional stuff was in the database. And then also the UIC database was incomplete. So I've been talking a little bit with OOGA, and what we've decided to do is when that data is fully released and I have the time to update this presentation, we'll distribute it again either online or through a webinar or something like that. So we'll figure that out when we get there. So the presentation is going to look a little different this year, and I apologize for that, but hopefully there's still some good stuff in here. Typically what we do in these presentations is do a general overview of Ohio oil and gas production, focusing on the year 2021. We'll look at completions and permit summaries. We'll look at operator activity, a couple different metrics, footage drilled, number of wells, things like that. We'll look at activity by the different counties in Ohio, and then we'll take a look at some of the publicly reported IP data that comes in with the completion reports. And then always interesting is to look at change of owners in the state. So the ODNR tracks the change of owners by wells, and so we'll take a look at some of that information. And production summary, as I mentioned, it'll be somewhat limited. And then the injection well summary is very limited this year. So I know that is important to a lot of people, but we'll definitely get that data incorporated in this presentation when we can. So again, thank you for coming. Little overview, oil and gas production in Ohio. Most of you in this room know these things, but for some of the newcomers, it's always interesting to note that there's been more than 275,000 wells drilled in Ohio since 1860. Ohio was known as, Northwest Ohio was the center of the oil industry in the late 1800s, so long heritage and history of oil and gas production in Ohio. Currently, there's more than 50,000 producing wells in 49 of Ohio's 88 counties. So on this map, you can see the distribution of these wells by major product, and notably missing from this particular map is the Utica Shale footprint in Jefferson County and eastern Ohio there, where there is a ton of gas being produced today. A little bit of history of wells drilled in Ohio by year and reservoir. So I mentioned early in the late 1800s, the Northwest Ohio Lima, Indiana field was developed, and then the Clinton oily plays in eastern Ohio. And then as with the advent of hydraulic fracturing technology in the 50s and the 60s, the Clinton and Berea plays opened up over all of eastern Ohio. In the 60s, the Morrow County play, just one county north of Columbus here, had a lot of wells drilled in the 60s and early 70s and still drilling today. And then the tight gas play really took off with the gas credits and things like that in the 80s, where we were drilling upwards of 5,000 wells a year in the state of Ohio. So big changes in number of wells. You'll see this year, as on trend with the last few years, big decreases in total number of wells, but total footage drilled has obviously increased with long lateral horizontals. So first thing we'll take a look at is some permit and completion activity. This is kind of an ongoing summary of activity from 2015 to 2021. This TV is a little bit over here, so hopefully you can hear me. But taking a look at 2021, there were 330 drilling permits issued in Ohio. This is about a 7% decrease over the year 2020. Big drop in the number of completion reports were filed with ODNR. There were 142 completion reports filed. That's about a 50% drop over 2020. Plugging permits is increased a little bit with some of the plugging dollars that are available and continue to work on some of those idle and orphan wells, as well as operators cleaning up their assets. So overall, permitting activity in Ohio is down about 14% over last year, but the big drop was actually in completion reports filed. Taking a look at the 2021 completions and the outcomes of those wells drilled, so of those 142 wells drilled, 132 of them were filed as producing wells. So again, showing the efficiency of drilling today. Not a lot of dry holes are being drilled these days. A couple other, 2 plugged and abandoned, a couple of active injection wells, and then a couple plug backs, and then a couple permits that were currently in the status of being drilled. So overall, completion reports, 142 filed, 132 producing wells. Taking a look at the permitted formations in 2021, so out of the 330 permits issued in that year, 270 of them were Utica Point Pleasant permits. Did see an increase in Clinton permits versus 2020. There was about 80% more Clinton permits, but still the total number of Clinton sandstone permits was about 27, and then 17 Knox formation wells, and then a handful of other formations that were targeted. Completions by month, again, taking a look at the permits that were issued, completion reports that were filed, and plugging permits that were issued on a monthly basis. So taking a look beginning in January, an increase in March and April, which is typical, and then a drop off towards the end of the year, and very little activity in November and December of last year. Another change this year and a continued trend is the number of operators that are filing completions in the state of Ohio. In 2020, there were 31 operators that filed completion reports. In 2021, we're down to 22, which is about 30% less operators. So the pool is continuing to reduce. Contrasting that with a high in 2008, there were 182 unique operators that filed completion reports. Taking a look at the wells and how they were distributed by configuration. So of the 142 permits filed, completion reports filed, about 120 of them were horizontal wells, and 17 of them were vertical wells, and a few directional wells. Completions by month, taking a look at vertical and horizontal well completions by month. May was a big month for completion reports filed. This doesn't mean when the well comes online or when it's TD'd, it's when the permit is actually, or when the completion report is filed with the state. So again, noticing a drop off in the last couple months of the year. Top 10 counties for number of wells drilled in 2021. Jefferson County had 36 completion reports filed, which represents about 25% of the total completion reports. Belmont County was the next most active county with 31 completion reports, and then followed by Harrison and Monroe. So the top 3 counties on here account for about 67% of the completion. So again, continuing the trend of the geographic consolidation there, and those 3 counties, that's been a trend that's been ongoing for a couple years. 12 most active operators by wells drilled. Encino Acquisition Partners leads the list this year with 47 wells completed in 2021. It's about the same number of wells as they filed completion reports for in 2020. Ascent Resources is next with 41 completion reports filed, which represents a pretty big drop off from 2020, about a 65% decrease. Gulfport Appalachia LLC increased activity and filed 20 completion reports in last year. And then newcomer Southwestern Production with their acquisitions in Ohio, operating some of the assets from the Montage acquisition. So the top 12 operators on this list account for 90% of the total wells drilled in the state of Ohio. Most active operators by footage drilled. Again, Encino Acquisition Partners at the top with drilling about a million feet of rock were drilled in 2021. Ascent Resources is closely behind with about 660,000 feet of rock drilled, which again represents about a 70% decrease over 2020. Gulfport, 415,000 feet. So this is total measured depth of these wells. The top 3 operators on this list account for 90% of the total footage drilled in the state of Ohio. Most active counties by footage drilled, similar trends here: Belmont, Harrison, Jefferson, and Monroe, the top 4 counties. And those top 3 counties were about 80% of the total footage drilled. Taking a look on the right-hand column and looking at the change versus 2020, you can see in all counties, with the exception of Columbiana County, footage drilled was down significantly in 2021 versus 2020. And then a historical look at total footage drilled, going down from 2021 below last year. There were about 2.3 million feet drilled. 2020, there were 4.8 million feet drilled. And then I always like to look at 2011, which is kind of the last pre-shale number, was about 1.8 million feet. And then going back even 2006, the conventional operators were drilling between 3 and 4 million feet per year. And now 90% of that footage in 2021 is unconventional wells. So 142 completion reports filed. The average footage per well was about 16,000 feet, which is a slight decrease over last year. Average IP for gas that was reported was about 19,640 MCF per day. Average oil was about 340 barrels of oil per day. One thing to note that I'll touch on a little bit later, of the 142 completion reports that were filed, only 71 of them had actual IPs reported. So I'm not quite sure why that is, but there's a limited number of IP data in the database currently. Change of owners by well, looking back historically, back to 2003. These are the number of transfers that ODNR registered, well transfers. So in 2020, there were almost 15,000 well transfers that occurred, which I believe was related to diversified oil and gas acquisitions and a couple other big transactions that occurred. 2021 historically was pretty quiet. About 2,100 change of owners were filed. The largest change of owners were Whitaker Enterprises to Graymar LLC, and then Triad Hunter to Eclipse, which I'm not sure if that's a legacy cleanup on the database. Beck Energy Corporation to Stevens Oil and Gas are the top 3, which were between 200 and 400 wells that were transferred. The top 12 shown on this list is about 70% of the total owner changes last year. So taking a look at the average IPs by county, so geographically looking at where these wells were drilled and what the IPs were in these different counties. So again, there was only 71 completion reports that included IP data, which I'm not quite understanding. I'm going to dig into that a little bit, and that'll be part of the update here when we get the rest of the data. But leading the list, looking at average IP using MCFE, I used an average 2021 WTI and Henry Hub pricing to come up with a gas equivalence of 17:1 to calculate the MCFEs. So taking a look at that list, Jefferson County was the leading county as far as highest IPs, about 32,000 MCFE per day. Belmont County was next. Guernsey County, Harrison County, Noble, Muskingum, and on down the list. So pretty big numbers here for these wells, average IPs, and of course they're limited by the number of wells included in the sample for each county. Looking at top operators by average IP, Ascent Resources with 15 completion reports filed with IPs at an average IP of 300 barrels of oil a day and 30 million cubic feet of gas. Next on the list is Encino Acquisition, and then Gulfport, which makes sense as these are the most active drillers in the state last year. Fourth on the list is Artex Energy Group with average IPs for 2 wells of 1,240 barrels per day and 2,000 MCF of gas. Taking a look at the limited oil and gas production that I had that was available, some of these slides are going to serve as placeholders until we get that data, but this is an interesting chart showing the number of wells in Ohio that reported production and historically. I expect 2021 will be in line and close to what 2021 was, which was just shy of 45,000 wells that reported volumes of hydrocarbons to ODNR for 2020. Again, taking a look at the annual data here, don't have the 2021 data, but what I did was updated the 2020 data and 2019 data. So some of these numbers may differ from prior versions of this report as that data becomes available. Gas, same thing. We'll look at the quarterly production data here in a few minutes. Historically, looking at Ohio oil production 1880 to 2020, in 1896, Ohio produced an estimated 24 million barrels of oil from western Ohio and the Trenton Black River Formation. In 2020, we were about the same, 23.8 million barrels of oil. I believe 2021 is going to be slightly less. Our peak production was peak modern production was in 2019, about 27.7 million barrels of oil produced. Top 12 wells. So this is taking a look at the 3 quarters of production data from Ohio that was available for the unconventional wells. So this is a ranking of the top 12 wells by volumes of oil produced over 3 quarters. So the top wells in Ohio, the top 5 wells are all Encino Acquisition Partners, the Masters well, the Weaver well, and 3 more Masters wells. Ranged from 170,000 barrels in 3 quarters to 210,000 barrels in 3 quarters. On this table is also gas, associated gas and water for these wells also, and we'll take a look at the gas producers also. Top 12 wells by gas, Ascent leads the list on this one, with the top well being in Belmont County, the Caulfield 4H, produced about 8 BCF of gas over 3 quarters. The next 4 wells on the list are also Ascent wells in Jefferson County and Belmont County. And as I mentioned earlier, Belmont and Jefferson are dominating the production numbers that we're seeing. But basically, the top 12 wells here range from 6 to 8 BCF over 3 quarters of production. Top 12 wells, water production. Again, taking a look at this and thinking about it in terms of injection and water reuse. Encino Acquisition Partners had the top 4 water producing wells in Ohio, the 3M19, the JD-CR, all produced over 100,000 barrels of oil in 3 quarters of time. So 120 days of production, almost 200,000 barrels of water produced from these wells. Taking a look at the top oil by operator, the top producer in terms of volume of oil produced was Encino Acquisition Partners, which produced just over 5 million barrels of oil in the first 3 quarters of 2021, followed by Ascent Resources, Eclipse, Utica Resource Operating, and then Gulfport Appalachia. The top producers for gas, Ascent, Encino Acquisition, Gulfport, Rice Drilling, and Eclipse represent the top 5, producing anywhere between 103 BCF of gas to 570 BCF of gas in the first 3 quarters. Taking a look at top operators by company and volumes of water produced, Encino produced about 5.8 million barrels of water in the first 3 quarters, followed by Ascent at about 4.6 million barrels of oil, and then Rice at 2.6 million barrels of water produced. So we have unconventional data, oil production by quarter. So this includes the first 3 quarters of 2021, and comparing to the peak oil production in the 3rd quarter of 2019. Production is down, oil production is down about 50% from that peak quarter in 2019. So cum production of oil was about 3.8 million barrels in Q3 2021. So a steady decrease ever since that peak. Taking a look at gas, the last 3 quarters of gas has been relatively flat. We had peak production in the fourth quarter of 2019, which was about 685 BCF in the fourth quarter. That production has dropped since, but has stabilized at about 550 BCF per quarter over the last 3 quarters. Number of wells online, again, continuing to see an increase. Third quarter 2020 through third quarter 2021, there was an increase about 7% of the total wells. So as of the end of the third quarter 2021, there were 2,883 wells, unconventional wells in Ohio that were reporting production. Class 2 injection wells, and again, this data is incomplete. We'll update this when we get there. Taking a look historically, production or injection volumes have been decreasing over the last 3 years. I expect that trend to continue with the reduced oil production that we're expecting to see. Once we get the final numbers, we'll update that. Overall, there's about a 6.6% decrease from 2019 to 2018, and then a similar decrease from 2021 to 2020. I expect that trend to continue when we get that data in. So that's all I have today. I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming and listening to this presentation. Hopefully there's some useful information in here, and we'll be in touch. Check on the OOGA website for this data to be distributed once we get it finalized and get updated with the full production histories. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Well, I just asked Marty if he would take Q&A, because as Marty was speaking, I'm now going to call him Sherpa some way, because, well, you know, because WTI went to 108.92
While I was talking?
while you were talking, and Brent went to 111.81. So I think we need to keep Marty up here for, I don't know, what do you think, 3-4 weeks? Okay. All joking aside, that was a lot of information in a really short time frame, and we do have about 5 minutes, because Chad Z tells me I'm okay on time. So do we have questions for Marty? Come on, Jerry.
Well, I must have told them everything they needed to know.
Well, but you know,
The questions will come later.
here's the thing. I'm the slow one in the group. So I need you to explain to me what the impact of the shutdown for COVID did for these numbers.
So I don't have a real good feeling for that. And I think that's a better question for our policy experts, but certainly it had an effect. And I know that there's been difficulties in getting services.
Yeah.
You know, the cost of services has gone up a lot. People doing the work has definitely been a challenge, and I'm sure you can relate to that. So I don't know if anybody has comments about the direct impact of COVID on oil and gas production, but I would think it would be pretty small because we were an essential industry through the whole thing. So I don't know if anyone has any comments.
Mike's looking for questions. No? All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Marty. Well, and I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but in a post-COVID world, we just have a lot of people who feel, I have to watch out because Bruce is going to say I'm defending the snowflakes, but we have a lot of folks who feel as though they don't have to work as hard as they did before. And what we know in this industry is everybody works hard every day. They go home safe. They make their partners on the job sites be safe. And the fundamental is we are here to stay. And I joke about the fact that the oil prices went up, but the reality is there are so many external factors that impact all the work that we do, from supply chain issues, like Marty was talking about, from workforce issues. And what we know, ladies and gentlemen, is that the stuff is in the ground. We need to be safe, and we need to be environmentally responsible as we take it out so that we can be in lovely rooms with warmth and comfort. So now, I thank you so much, Marty, for bumping up that oil price, and I'll keep track of it during the day. But now we have the Chief of the Division of Oil and Gas Resources Management. As Chief, Eric Vendel oversees the regulation of Ohio's oil and gas, oil and natural gas industry for the protection of the public and the environment. As an ODNR employee since 2012, Eric served as the attorney with the Ohio Legislative Service Commission, where he was the principal drafter of several oil and gas bills. He's got a JD from Capital, a master's in organic chemistry from The Ohio State University, and a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Wittenberg. So I'm counting on the fact that, Eric, you're going to be able to bump up that oil price here as well. Counting on you, Eric. Again, what is with Ohio State? He enjoys watching movies, Ohio State football, and spending time with his wife and 7 children. So let us introduce Eric Vendel, the Little League champion of the area. Thank you so much.
I'm not sure how to forward a slide here. Is this the? Oh, the big green one. That makes sense. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. This is my 3rd year. Similar to Rob, in his 2 weeks on the job, my first year, I think I was 5 days into being chief before I spoke before the OOGA conference. Last year was COVID, so I think we're getting out of these odd situations, and I'm looking forward to that. On the agenda, I was scheduled to talk about ODNR rules update. I hope you will indulge me in shifting my gears a little bit, because I think it's a hugely important opportunity for the state of Ohio, the industry, and the like, to focus more on another topic. And I'll just give you a little bit on orphan well plugging. So I would appreciate that. So today I want to talk about 3 things. Primarily, Marty kind of stole a lot of my thunder on the first bit. So we'll hopefully I can go through it a little bit from a different perspective. So we'll go over some production and permitting numbers. I want to talk about our orphan well program, the growth we've had, and some of the changes we've made. And then I want to finish up with opportunities for your businesses in Ohio and doing great things for the state of Ohio. So these first 5 slides, we're going to go through these relatively quickly. And I primarily want to use these to show that I think the outcome or the future looks positive in Ohio based on the data that we're getting in for the oil and gas industry. So you can see on this chart here that we've had a little bit of decrease in the permitting, the horizontal well permits issued by year in 2020 and 2021, but they're not anywhere close to where they were in 2019. But on a positive note, my staff has been swamped with new applications for drilling permits in 2022, and the current track would put us more in line with 2019 numbers. So we're seeing an uptick in the drilling, and obviously the commodity prices are a big contributor to that. So I think that's a positive note. This slide here, I just want to illustrate, primarily we have 3,166 total wells drilled. And again, I think we're going to see a recovery, more of a recovery this year in wells drilled. 2021 were kind of flat relative to 2019, which was a bigger year, and 2018 for that matter. Cumulative producing horizontal wells, again, the trend is increasing from our perspective. And we have 2,815 total producing wells, horizontal wells. And like I said, I think we'll see that increase as well. Shale oil production by quarter, Marty went into a lot more detail than I'm going to go into, but you know, we had a drop off in 2021 and 2020, and we had I think his number was a little different than mine, so I might have to get together with him. But we had over 16 million barrels of shale oil produced, and when you add in the conventional wells, that was over 18 million barrels produced. Again, we anticipate this will increase this year. I think the operators from our perspective we're seeing are moving more into the wet gas and oil window, which is a great benefit of the play in Ohio. We have that opportunity to move with commodity prices. And finally, our shale natural gas production by quarter, you know, that held a little more consistent. And I think it's quite amazing. You know, we're producing over 2.2 trillion cubic feet of natural gas a year. The state of Ohio consumes 1 trillion cubic feet of natural gas a year. So it's pretty impressive. So in a nutshell, our data looks positive for Ohio. I'd like to shift now to what I really is on my heart, and I think we can all do great things, is the orphan well program. And as Mr. Shumway had in his presentation, he showed the brief history of the oil and gas well drilling in Ohio over the years. And so we do have a long history of wells drilled in Ohio. And with that history, we have a lot of wells that are unplugged and unaccounted for as far as plugging records and the like. As a result of that, the General Assembly adopted or enacted the orphan well program in the late 70s. And those are all contained in statute, the requirements for that program. And when a well is determined to be an orphan well, there's certain statutory requirements that have to be met from our perspective, the division's perspective. For example, we have to do title work, we have to send out notice and other things to determine that it's an orphan well and to move it through its process. So when a well is gone through the statutory analysis, we put it in the program, and that's what the first number represents here. We have 1,053 wells currently reviewed in accordance with our statutes that are in the orphan well program and are being put into packages for plugging. This next number is important because, as I'll discuss later, the Infrastructure Act required us to have a number of documented wells by which we apply for formula grants. So the division looked at all the records we had. We had industry folk, specifically Don Huck was instrumental in gathering a lot of the well data information as well as others, and we were able to confirm we have over 19,662 wells where we have documents of casing, formations drilled, GPS coordinates, and the like. So that fit the federal statute definition for a documented well. And those wells, we have further investigation underway. So that's important for later on when I talk about the formula. Now this slide shows our orphan well program's growth over the recent years. So if you can see, in 2013 we plugged 10 wells, and in 2021 we plugged 180 wells with the help of the industry and our plugging contractors. It was relatively flat for a number of years for a couple reasons. One, we were doing some internal work to improve the efficiencies, and that consisted of our contract with the DAS to get qualified vendors so that we didn't have to bid out all these packages all the time to the whole state. We could have a set of qualified vendors and bid out these packages to contractors who were able to plug wells properly. So that was made in 2016. So it took a couple years for us to start seeing the fruits of our labor on that. And you can see the trend here has increased substantially over the years. And the other thing to remember too is that statute that I talked about previously requires us to plug the most riskiest wells first. So the numbers don't reflect necessarily the difficult work that we're doing in the field of getting the high-risk wells out of the environment first. So, and another aspect I'd like to explain on this chart here is the orange bars represent the number of wells encumbered by contract. So when we create a project, we put a certain number of wells in that project, and we bid that out to contractors and award the contract for those number of wells. The gray bar here is the actual number of wells plugged pursuant to those awarded contracts. So there's a difference in numbers in there because the contractors just haven't got to the rest of those wells yet in a given year. So the way I take that is we have more space for more contractors to get involved because we're a little ahead of them right now. So this is another opportunity to get involved. So what's our program look like over the next 10 plus years? We think that there's unprecedented opportunity for growth. And I want to emphasize this is not a short term. We're talking 10 to 20 years. So I think I want to emphasize that for two reasons. One, we have plenty of money and we need contractors to be involved. And two, I think it's not just a business that can be created through this. I think it can be a career because of the amount of money that we have. So I'd like for you to keep that in mind. And this bottom snippet on here shows we have over $500 million that we're looking at to spend over those next 15 plus years. So a lot of opportunity. So now I want to transition to what the feds have done, and I know you've all heard about it. It's the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And in that act that was passed, $4.7 billion were made available for plugging orphan wells, remediation, and restoration. Of that $4.7 billion, $4.2 billion is going to the states. And what's that? How is that being funded? There's three types of grants that are laid out in the statute. There's initial grants, there's formula grants, and there's performance grants. The initial grants can consist up to $25 million, and that's to get out of the gate this year and to get the programs moving. The second grant is the formula grants, and that's based on the number of wells, documented orphan wells, that number that I showed before, the 19,662. It's based on a formula of jobs loss, and there's one other prong that's escaping me right now. And then finally, the performance grants, and that's $1.5 million, and that is a matching grant program and also a regulatory improvement. So if you've made regulatory improvements for plugging wells and restoration, and you have matching grant money, then you have an additional amount available. So how does that play out for Ohio? So on the first initial grant, Ohio could potentially get up to $25 million. It's estimated that we'll get $25 million. And we're moving forward with steps to acquire that money. The next grant is the formula grant. And the Department of the Interior is establishing those grant amounts. And on the initial, they've broken it down into phases. And on phase one, they awarded Ohio almost $60 million for phase one, and then that estimates out to 231 total over the 8-year formula grant program. And then finally, Ohio has the opportunity to get an additional $70 million under those performance-related grants. Okay, so what's Ohio's potential funding? I said we have a lot of opportunity here, and I'm excited about this, but I need help. Here's what we're currently facing. So in the current state biennium funding, as you all may know, we have to spend 30% of our previous year's revenue from severance tax on orphan well plugging and restoration. So that's tracking around $20 to $22 million. Secondly, we have the total Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act funding. So when you add up all those grant monies, it's potentially $326 million that will be available for us through 2035 to get into contract. So if Ohio's production holds fairly steady through 2035, The total amount of both federal and state funding potentially could be $634 million through 2035. So we're talking a lot of money. That puts Ohio potentially to be one of the top 2 funded states in the country for orphan well plugging. So that's a lot of money to spend. So what's Ohio's plan? Did I skip a page? No, I didn't skip a page. We have a 3-step plan that we think gives us a lot of flexibility and provides great opportunities no matter what your business model is in the state of Ohio. The first is to locate and refer the wells. Second is to design plugging plans. And third is to award contracts to plug the wells. So the first is locating and referring wells, and those will come through landowner submittals. We're going to start a public information campaign to get the word out that, hey, if you have a well on your property, contact the Department of Natural Resources, Division of Oil and Gas, so that we can get that well properly plugged. And we're going to be doing, we have been doing, and we're going to expand the program of drone flights with magnetometers. And magnetometers, if you're not familiar, are basically a metal detector that hangs from a drone that locates buried casings wherever they might be in fields and whatnot. The second then is the designing of the plugging plans. Currently the division is designing the plugging plans, but we are in the process of hiring consultants to help us with those plugging plans in order to get enough projects out for all these opportunities. Third is awarding the contracts to plug the wells, and we have 3 options. We have our traditional program that I talked about, qualified vendors. We have a new program that we're rolling out, which will be the construction manager at risk, and then the landowner pass-through payment program. So this is a flow chart of our plan. And if you look on this flow chart, you can see a yellow star, and the yellow star indicates all the opportunities for businesses to participate and partner with us to plug the wells. And this is another way of just laying out that 3-part plan that we talked about. So the first part is locating and referring those wells. So once we get those wells located, we will start putting those in projects, and this will allow us to have efficiencies. So if we can group a bunch of tightly knit wells all in one area, go in there one time, plug them all at once, and get out. We only have one mobilization cost in there, and then we can allow contractors to sit in those locations and plug a lot of wells at one time. Once it's in an orphan well project, then depending on whether it goes through the landowner pass-through payment on the left side, which I'll talk about more in a little bit, or whether it goes to one of the awarded contracts on the right side, we will be designing projects for those on the right side, and we'll be building an inventory so we can build packages of multiple size wells. We can build packages of 1 well, we can build packages of 30 wells, we can build packages of 100 wells. This will allow flexibility for the industry and for the division, and depending on your business model and what your capacity is, we can ramp up or ramp down as needed. So I think this gives us a lot of flexibility. So let's go into detail on some of these things a little bit more. So the first step is locating and referring the wells, and like I said before, we're going to be flying drones with a metal detector hanging from the bottom. This picture on the right shows an example of the drone, and on the bottom of that is a yellow little tube that's the metal detector. We fly those over a set area of property, and we locate buried casings. We currently have a MOU with the Ohio Department of Transportation Unmanned Aerial Surveillance Group, and they are flying, they're required to fly at least 12,000 acres a year, and so we're using that, and we're going to expand that too to the consultants that I talked about. And we've actually, this slide is out of date actually. We've actually executed contracts with 2 consultants to fly drones, so we're moving on that already. So that's our first step. The second is designing the plugging plans like I talked before, and the plugging plans are the scope of work for the contracts that set forth how a well has to be plugged. These have to be in compliance with statute and rules, so the plugging plan has to be approved. And like I said before, the division is currently working on those plugging plans, and we are hiring consultants to build up our inventory so that we can be flexible, like I said. And this slide's out of date as well because we posted an RFQ. We received responses for their RFQ, and we're scoring those as we speak. I just got off the phone with one of my team before I came here, and they've almost got those scored, and we should be awarding that no later than April. So that's moving too. The third step is awarding contracts to plug wells. Our traditional program, like I talked about before, you have to be a certified contractor through the DAS program. The DAS is going to open this contract up again this spring. So I would encourage you, because we've had a lot of people contact the division over the years, when can I get on the contract? When can I get on the contract? With all this money coming, I would encourage you, if you have any interest in plugging wells, to go ahead and get qualified this spring so that you have the opportunity to participate in the DAS program. You have nothing to lose but the time to get qualified. If you don't plug wells, nothing's going to happen. If you don't bid, nothing's going to happen. As I said before, the division creates those scopes of work. They include access plans, engineered drawings, plugging plans, restoration, all kinds of aspects to there. You can read some of that. Under that plan, the contractor submits an offer on a project, and then the division scores those projects, and we're required to take the most responsive and responsible offers received. The new program that we're going to be posting, I believe it might be next week, is the construction manager at risk, and that's established in the revised code 9.33. And under the construction manager at risk, they serve as a general contractor. And so they'll review the plans and the scopes of work. They'll hire subcontractors based on qualifications and past performance. So it's not just the lowest bid that they have to take. They can use past performance as their criteria. Now, what this adds is the opportunity to break the work down into a bunch of subs. So the construction manager at risk can hire earth movers, they can hire aggregate people, they can hire mat rentals, they can do all of that. And so we think we can improve efficiencies from that level as well. What's their role? Their role is to manage the completion of the work. So they'll manage the bidding, they'll manage the subcontractors, they'll manage the schedules and timelines of work, they'll track the work, the quantities, and the payments, and then the division will work with them to witness and regulate the plugging of the well. So we have certain requirements in our rules and statutes where we have to be present and make sure that the plugging complies with the requirements. Now, going back to that third option, the landowner pass-through payment program, that's been in statute for a while now. We've had it up and running since the summer of 2020, available for contractors to take advantage of. We had our first 2 applications received under the updated program in the fall of 2021, and we had our first well plugged in January of 2022. Now, with this program, it's a little bit differently than the DAS certified qualified contractors in the fact that you don't have to be certified. You just have to be regularly engaged in the business of plugging wells. So what can happen is you can go to a landowner based on the wells that we have in that package, and we'll get to that flow chart again. I want to wrap it up with that flow chart. And you'll be able to look at the wells in the package. You can go to a property, you can contact the landowner and work with them, and you sign a contract with the landowner. And then what happens is once the work's completed in accordance with that contract, the division pays the contractor directly. So that's how that program works. I think there's a big upside for the landowner pass-through payment contract approach to this for a couple of reasons. We have, like I said before, we have a lot of money that's available, but the second thing is if you have one landowner with multiple wells on their property, there's nothing in the statute that says we can't package a bunch of wells up in one contract with that landowner. So for example, in Northwest Ohio, Morrow, Medina County, where you might have a bigger tract of land with 15, 20 wells on that property, I think we can work through the details of that and put those in one package in a contract. You'll have to get, we'll permit each of those wells individually, but we'll have one contract. So I'm encouraged by that, and I think there's a lot of upside potential if we can partner together and get that work done. Related to that, if you wouldn't mind indulging me to take a little sidestep and have our contractor, who has gone through the landowner pass-through payment, come up and just kind of tell you his experience with that. So Ron, would you mind coming up and just providing a couple words on that?
I'm Ron Gibson with Gibson Energy Services. We're out of Lorain County, Avon Lake, Ohio, and we've had two wells approved under the program. We are also an approved or certified contractor with the DAS, and we've been plugging wells for the last 4 or 5 years through the system using the traditional ODNR system. But we think this offers a good opportunity for our situation because there's so many wells in Lorain County and Huron County that are like Ohio shale wells. They're pretty much generic wells, simple to plug, and they're not on the high priority list with the state. These are like nuisance wells for the landowners. They don't want them there. We get calls all the time from people that are saying, when's the state going to take care of my well, get this well plugged? And now we have a system to fund that where we don't have to wait for the state to put a well into a program, put it into a competitive bid situation. So we think it's going to be a good situation for us. And I assume with, 1980s and forward Clinton wells, where they're pretty much generic, easy to plug wells, it should work also. I think the most difficult part is that in doing it, the contractor has to basically sponsor the project. The landowners aren't sophisticated enough to solicit the bids from 3 contractors, and so what we're doing, we've created a system using the state's documentation to basically meet with the landowner, make a presentation showing with the landowner pass-through application, what kind of contracts that we're going to enter into in the future. We develop a scope of work that they will use to solicit bids with the request for proposal from 3 contractors. And the most difficult thing we've had is on the second project, we had a land developer who wanted to do the whole thing himself because he was pretty savvy at doing these type of projects, and he didn't develop the scope of work. So he got 3 different types of bids. So we're going to suggest going forward that we're going to present the landowner with the contract, with the exhibits that are the scope of work, and an offer sheet, so that all the bids come back it's the same. So I think it's more fair for everybody, and it's a way that everybody gets compensated for their work. So.
Thanks, Ron. I think the take-home message is the landowner pass-through payment program does work and can work, and as Ron said, there's a lot of upside there. And like I said before, we have unlimited funds for that purpose too. So I'd like to end with this slide again, reminding everybody that we've got a plan set out. We've already implemented most of the locate and refer aspects of the wells. We've already implemented the plugging and restoration design aspects, and we're looking to expand this construction manager at risk. On that initial construction manager at risk, we're looking to do initially 2 of those at a $10 to $12 million contract apiece. But once we iron out some of those problems, there's nothing that says we can't increase that amount on those or the number of those construction managers at risk. So that's why I'm saying I think we've created a very good plan here. where we don't leave anybody behind, whether you're a small company, whether you're a big company, whether you can do a limited amount of work for a short time, or you can do a lot of work for a long time. We thought about this long and hard. We looked at how we can fit this in with the state statutory schemes, and we're really excited about this. I've been told by multiple people who have looked at this orphan well plugging aspect from a United States perspective, that Ohio, a lot of people are looking to Ohio as a model, that they're really excited about what we're putting out, and they think that we're leading the charge in our approach to this. So, but what I need is contractors. I need help. I'm looking forward to partnering with all of you. If you have questions, reach out to me, reach out to our orphan well team. I think we can leave a positive legacy through this. We have the money, like I said, is there. We're estimating 15 to 20 years, so you can build a business or a career out of this. And so, we can do great things for the industry by plugging these wells. We can do great things for the environment. We can do great things for the people of Ohio. So I look forward to partnering with you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. On our website, we have our orphan well program information at oilandgas.ohiodnr.gov. The forms for the pass-through payment program are all up there. A sample contract that satisfies state contracting requirements is up there. You can pull that down. We've tried to make it as easy as possible for everybody. So thank you very much.
Do we have any questions? Chief, first question back here.
Hi, thanks, Chief, for coming. It's Stephanie Timmermeyer with Gulfport, in case you can't see me. Thanks for coming. I think it's so important, as you know, for the regulators to be accessible to us as a regulated community. I did have one question. Really appreciated the information about the orphan well program. And I'm wondering, as you mentioned, permitting is picking up in 2022. And from my understanding, we are maybe down some permitters, and that some of those resources are going to the orphan well program, which is a great program. Are you having some internal conversations about how to make sure we're staffed up for the surge of permitting in 2022? And then my second kind of question is, are you experiencing resource issues like we are and our contractors are, with workforce issues and people wanting flexibility and different types of schedules, and how's the agency dealing with that?
No, those are good questions. Yeah, so I'll let you behind the curtain a little bit. We did have some transitions internally with some permitting staff. We posted a new permitting geologist, and we're actually going to post a second permitting geologist. So we are ramping up to account for that increase in numbers. I should have mentioned this earlier on my charts about the positive outlook for Ohio. Our unitization numbers have been going through the roof too, and we are making changes to improve efficiencies there too. So we see it across the board. Staffing can be a challenge. I mean, the industries and all kinds of businesses out there are having challenges getting staff on board, and so we're working through those. We're optimistic. We've been hiring a lot of people to account for losses over the last couple of years. As far as I think, as far as your second question, that's a little more challenging. I don't know what the long-term aspect is on that, but right now we have had staff teleworking part-time. So we're making it work. We've got processes in place so that we can continue to issue those permits. And our systems are electronic, so whether they're in the office or teleworking, it doesn't affect how we review those.
Next question. Okay, Chief, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Chief. And while you were speaking, we're now up to 111 and 114. So we just need to keep talking as we raise that. I was going to say per barrel, but okay, you're with me, you know. We really do look forward to working with you. And as I was sitting there and Chief was talking about a 10 to 15 to 20 year program, I'm thinking, I have a 10-year-old grandson and I have a newborn granddaughter. So I'm really hopeful for this industry to be able to provide them with jobs. So, but back to you folks. We are going to take a break. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, so what I would like to ask you to do is take your break. We're going to come back here for a discussion of the industry through the eyes of the community. And we all know there are some folks who don't like us. I can't imagine why, because we're good looking and we're fun, but there are those, right, Stephanie? So we're going to come back at 10:45. Are we coming back at 10? Mike, are we still coming back at 10:45? Mike's chatting over there. So we're gonna come back at 10:45 for the panel, and I would encourage you all to go and hit up the chief for those job opportunities. Are we coming back at 10:45, Mike? 55, Mike says. See, I like to keep things, you know, the trains run on time in my world. So Mike says 10:55, we'll see you back here. Go get a biscuit, go get a cup of coffee, and we'll see you soon.